Live before the nation, Nancy Mace said 2 words, you people, and thought it was over. But Jasmine Crockett rose like a storm, firing back with truth, so sharp it cracked. Congress open, privilege, betrayal, history, all exposed in seconds. Did Jasmine Crockett just rewrite the rules? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The Capitol hearing room was packed shoulder to shoulder, cameras flashing like lightning. Every seat was taken, reporters, lawmakers, veterans in faded uniforms. In the back row, an old black veteran clutched his cap, eyes locked on the front. He had fought for the flag, but today he came to see if the flag still fought for him. At the center, Jasmine Crockett sat upright, calm but fierce, a thick folder before her like a weapon. Across the table, Nancy Mace smirked, the kind of smirk that dares the world to react. The hearing was about veterans' rights, the sacred promise of America. But then Mace leaned forward, her tone sharp and cold. You people always think America owes you. The air snapped. The room went dead silent. The veterans behind Jasmine looked at each other, wounded, furious. Jasmine lifted her head slowly, eyes like steel, unblinking, ready for war. The silence after Mace's words was like a fuse burning toward an explosion. Reporters froze. Cameras zoomed tighter. Somewhere in the back, a chair creaked as a veteran shifted, jaw locked. Jasmine didn't move, not yet. The gavel hadn't even struck again, but the air already trembled. And then, like she'd been waiting for this moment all along, Nancy Mace leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain. You are exactly what's wrong with this conversation, Congresswoman, she sneered. You're the voice of people who never stop complaining, always finding something to cry about, always acting like America owes you something. Her words landed like punches. Gas rippled through the room. The old veteran's hand clenched around his cane knuckles white. Mace wasn't done. She leaned even closer, her tone turning crueler. You people and your so-called veteran community have become a burden on this country. We can't keep carrying you forever. The room erupted, not with noise, but with shock. Reporters exchanged looks, mouths open. A few veterans in the back tensed, fists curling tight. One woman blinked back, tears whispering, "Did she just say that?" The sound of chairs scraping against the floor filled the space as others shifted uneasily. For a moment, it felt like the hearing room might explode into chaos. All eyes swung to Jasmine Crockett, still silent, still unmoving, like a storm about to break. Then Jasmine rose. Slowly, deliberately. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't have to. Her calm was sharper than any shout. You, people, she repeated, each word echoing through the chamber. A burden. Her tone was steady but cut deep, slicing the tension like a blade. Every time you say, you people, you erase the blood that was shed in the deserts of Iraq, the jungles of Vietnam, the frozen hills of Korea. You erase the soldiers who came home under the same flag you wave in your campaign ads. Her gaze locked on Mace, unwavering. You're not insulting me, Congresswoman. You're insulting hundreds of thousands who wore this nation's uniform and didn't have your skin color. The room stayed dead silent, the kind of silence that hums in your bones. Even the photographers paused before snapping again, their flashes, lighting Jasmine's face like lightning across a stormy sky. She flipped open her folder. The pages slapped against the desk, crisp and final. Let's talk facts, she said, her voice cold and factual now. According to the Government Accountability Office, disability claims from Black veterans are denied at nearly double the rate of white veterans. 2 soldiers serve in the same unit, 1 white, 1 black. Same mission, same risk, same sacrifice. But the white veteran gets approved in 3 months. The black veteran waits 30. Gasps, scribbling. The room came alive again, reporters typing furiously, veterans nodding grimly, cameras clicking nonstop. Jasmine didn't stop there. That's not politics, she said. That's betrayal. That's what you people looks like when it's printed on paper, instead of just whispered across tables like this. She closed the folder, her hand steady. So when you say America can't keep carrying us, she finished, eyes never leaving Mace. Remember who carried it first in war zones, in body bags, and in silence when they came home to nothing. The last word hung in the air, heavy as gunfire. No one dared breathe. Even the chairman sat frozen, his gavel hovering midair. And that was the moment the hearing truly began. The room was still shaking from Jasmine's last words when Nancy Mace shot up from her chair. Her voice cut through the air like glass shattering. "This isn't about race," she snapped, eyes flashing with defiance. "You people love turning everything into politics. You want to divide the military, divide the country, and then call it justice." The words came fast, sharp, practice the tone of someone used to deflecting the truth. Mace slammed her palm on the desk. "The military is about honor, not skin color. Stop using it for your agenda." Gasps erupted across the chamber. Reporters exchanged frantic looks, their fingers flying across keyboards. The veterans in the back row shifted again. Disbelief, anger, pain, all written on their faces. The chair tried to calm the room, tapping the gavel, but the noise only grew louder. Cameras clicking, murmurs spreading like fire. Jasmine didn't react. She just stood still, her eyes locked on Mace, unblinking, unreadable. And then she spoke, slow, cold, and deliberate. "You say this isn't about race," she asked quietly. "Then let's see what your record says." She reached into her folder and pulled out 3 sheets of paper. The camera lights flickered across the documents as she laid them one by one on the desk. "In 2021, Jasmine began, you voted against the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, the bill meant to keep black men from dying on American streets. You called it overreach." Mace shifted in her seat, lips tightening, but Jasmine kept going. "In 2022, you voted against the Voting Rights Act, the very law protecting the democracy those same soldiers fought for." The room went silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence, heavier, more dangerous. Jasmine's voice rose slightly enough to command the air. "And just last year, she said you publicly dismissed the Minority Veterans Assistance Program, the one program helping veterans who look like the men sitting behind me, calling it, and I quote, an unfair handout." Flashes went off like a storm. Mace's expression hardened, but her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her microphone. "You can twist votes all you want," she muttered, voice tight, "but that doesn't change the facts." Jasmine didn't even blink. "The facts are exactly what I'm reading," she replied. Her tone was surgical now, not anger, not emotion, just precision. "Every time you say, 'you people,' it's not just 2 words. It's a pattern. It's a history written in ink and votes, in denials and silence." The chair tried again to strike the gavel. Order, order. But no one heard. The cameras were flashing nonstop now, every outlet hungry for the image. Jasmine standing tall, Mace cornered beneath the lights. Jasmine leaned slightly forward, her voice calm but unrelenting. "You people isn't just what you said today," she said. "It's every vote you've cast against those you call a burden." She paused. The words hung in the air, thick and irreversible. The chair slammed the gavel again, his voice breaking through the noise. Order in the hearing, order. But it was too late. The story was already written in the faces of everyone watching, the reporters, the veterans, the cameras. Jasmine didn't need to say another word. The evidence spoke louder than any argument. The gavel echoed again, but the chamber wasn't quiet. It was alive, buzzing, trembling on the edge of history. The echoes of the gavel hadn't faded when Jasmine leaned forward, her eyes locked on Nancy Mace. The lights glared down harsh and white, but Jasmine didn't blink. "You call them a burden," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "They're not begging. They're asking for a chance that you in this system have stolen from them." The words struck like gunfire in the still air. Reporters froze, mid-typing, cameras zoomed in tighter. Mace shifted in her seat, lips pressed thin, but Jasmine kept going, each sentence steady, sharp, unstoppable. "Let me tell you about one of those men you call a burden," Jasmine continued. "He came back from Iraq still wearing the same uniform he nearly died in. His hands smelled of engine grease. He wanted to open a small auto shop, something honest, something that would let him rebuild his life." Jasmine's voice softened for a moment, not out of pity, but rage held steady. "He walked into a bank with perfect credit, clean record, a business plan in hand. The banker looked him in the eye and said, 'You don't fit the profile for this loan.'" Gasps rippled across the room. Jasmine didn't pause. That same week, she said his white buddy from the same unit, less experience, less savings, got approved for a transport company loan in 48 hours. Her tone grew colder. "That's not merit. That's discrimination in a suit and tie." Cameras clicked wildly. A few veterans in the back nodded, eyes shining with a mix of anger and recognition. Jasmine took a breath, her fingers resting on the edge of her folder. You call it a fair system. I call it a trap dressed up as paperwork. She stepped closer to the microphone. Another story, she said. A Marine came home, medals on his chest, dreams in his pocket. He wanted to buy a house to give his kids a real home. He qualified for a government-backed mortgage. But the real estate agent smiled and whispered, "This neighborhood isn't right for your family. Let me show you something else." The audience murmured. Everyone knew what that meant. Jasmine's voice grew heavy. So he got pushed to a poor neighborhood, bad schools, broken streets, no grocery stores. His kids grew up watching the American dream from behind a cracked window. Mace crossed her arms, trying to look unfazed, but the tremor in her jaw betrayed her. Jasmine's eyes never left her. They didn't fail because they were lazy, she said. They failed because the door was slammed in their face again and again. Every time they tried to stand on their own feet, this system broke their legs and called it their fault. Her tone turned icy. You call them weak. I call them survivors of a quiet war, the kind fought not with guns but with denial letters and fake smiles. The air grew thick. Even the chair of the committee leaned back, his expression unreadable. Jasmine took one last look at the veterans behind her, the same men and women who had fought, bled, and come home only to be abandoned by the country they defended. Then she turned back to Mace, her voice low and final. You call them a burden, she said, but the real burden, the real shame, is a nation too cowardly to honor the people who once stood on the front lines to protect it. Her words hit like a final strike. The room was silent again, not from fear but from the weight of truth. Cameras flashed. The old veteran in the back wiped a tear from his cheek, and even the chair didn't reach for the gavel this time. The silence itself felt like judgment. The tension in the hearing room was suffocating. Jasmine stood still, her silence louder than any outburst. Mace's insult, you people, still hung in the air, like a stain that refused to fade. Cameras whirred softly, picking up every twitch, every breath. The crowd waited for Jasmine to strike back, but she didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, she reached down into her briefcase, her movements slow, deliberate, the kind that makes everyone lean in. When her hand emerged, she was holding something old and folded, a faded American flag, edges, frayed, one corner still marked with a dark, dried stain. The room fell completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Jasmine unfolded it with care, revealing stars dulled by time and stripes tinted with age. Then she lifted it high above her head. Her voice came quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. The blood on this flag has no color, she said. But when the people who carried it home return, this country looks at their skin before it values their sacrifice. Every camera light flared. The sound of shutters filled the room like thunder. Mace's smirk disappeared. Her face froze pale under the fluorescent glare. Jasmine stepped away from her seat, the flag still in her hand, and walked slowly across the floor. The sound of her heels echoed like a drum beat in the vast silence. She stopped at Mace's table, standing just inches away. Every eye followed her. You call them, you people, Jasmine said softly. Then put your hand on this flag and say it again. Her voice rose not in anger but in truth. Go on, she challenged, setting the flag down in front of Mace. Say you people to the soldiers who wrapped their brothers in this flag. Say it to the ones who never came home. Say it to the hands that folded this same fabric over a coffin while the anthem played. The words hit like bullets. Mace didn't move. Her eyes darted from the flag to the cameras, to Jasmine, then back to the flag again. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Behind her, a sound broke the stillness, a muffled sob. An old veteran in the back row leaned forward, his shoulders shaking. That's my flag, he whispered hoarsely. I carried it home. The words cracked the room open. Reporters lowered their cameras. Veterans bowed their heads, and for the first time all day, Nancy Mace's hands trembled where they rested on the desk. Jasmine didn't look away. She just watched Mace, calm, steady, merciless in her truth. Mace's fingers twitched, almost reaching toward the flag, then stopped halfway. The color drained from her face. Her jaw clenched. She tried to form words but failed. The flag lay between them like evidence in a trial, torn, stained, and undeniable. Jasmine's tone turned to ice. You people, she said, each word deliberate. It isn't just an insult. It's betrayal of the blood that soaked into this flag. No one breathed. The lights hummed overhead, the cameras flickered, and for a moment the world outside that hearing room didn't exist. Mace sat frozen, unable to lift her hand, unable to defend herself. Jasmine's eyes stayed locked on her, calm but burning. Then slowly she stepped back, leaving the flag, where it lay a silent accusation, a living witness. The veteran wiped his eyes. The reporters stared. The chairman didn't even reach for the gavel this time. Jasmine's words had landed like a verdict, final and unshakable. And in that instant, the chamber wasn't just a room, it was a mirror reflecting the soul of a nation that had to decide what its flag really meant. The flag still lay between them, creased and scarred, when Jasmine rose to her full height. She drew a breath, the kind that steadies a trigger finger and clears the fog of noise and doubt and fear. Once the uniform is on, skin color does not exist. But when the uniform comes off, this policy turns us back into you people. That is the greatest betrayal. When she spoke, her voice cut through the chamber with the calm of a final verdict. The room seemed to lean forward as one body breath held and eyes pinned to her. Nancy Mace blinked hard twice, searching for footing and finding none. Her rebuttal came out in fragments, a tangle of half-thoughts and forced smiles that never reached her eyes. Confidence drained from her posture, syllables stumbling over the mic like broken steps. She tried to meet Jasmine's gaze and failed, looking instead to the clock, to press the exit. The contrast was ruthless, one voice clear as glass, the other fraying in the heat. The chamber listened to the difference and understood. Jasmine turned from Mace to the veterans, steadying the moment with nothing but presence. Her eyes traveled the back row, stopping on faces carved by service loss and patience, stretched to breaking in duty that had cost them sleep. Every word arrived like a bell struck once and left to ring, crisp and unhurried. She spoke to them, not at them, letting the quiet carry her meaning across the floor in the years. Cameras flashed, but for once the light felt smaller than the truth standing at the microphone. Mace lowered her head, her hands trembling, and the room felt the surrender. Reporters tilted their lenses for a line of sight, and the old black veteran in the last row sat taller, his eyes bright with unshed grief. Mace wet her lips and tried to speak. That's not, but the rest disintegrated into rasp the microphone caught and magnified. She reached for her water, the glass knocking the wood with a nervous clink that sounded louder than thunder in the quiet. A staffer slid a note toward her, and she stared at it, the color gone from her face. Jasmine did not move, did not chase the moment. She simply stood with the veterans behind her, her silence refusing to bargain. The scene rewrote itself in real time. Not a brawl, but a reckoning. Not a headline, but a truth that could stand alone. The chair cleared his throat, the gavel hovering, then finally at last brought it down hard with a dry click. The hearing is recessed. Chairs scraped, reporters surged, and then the crowd split as an old veteran stepped forward, shoulders squared against time. He reached for Jasmine's hand and held it with both of his. You fought for us again, not on a battlefield but in this room. Jasmine nodded once, and the quiet between them said everything the microphones could not. The echo of the gavel was still hanging in the air when the video hit the internet. Within minutes, the clip of Jasmine Crockett facing Nancy Mace spread through every corridor of Congress, first whispered about, then replayed on every screen in the Capitol. Staffers stopped mid-stride to watch phones tilted upward. Reporters who had covered hundreds of hearings said they had never seen anything like it. The image froze on Jasmine holding the blood-stained flag, Mace pale beside her. That single frame became the picture of the day, looping endlessly on the big monitors outside the press room. In the marble corridors, lawmakers whispered in clusters. Some called it bravery, others called it chaos, but no one could look away. The tension that had started inside the hearing room now pulsed through the veins of the Capitol itself. Members of the Democratic caucus huddled behind closed doors, voices low but urgent. We can't let this moment fade, one aide said, sliding a folder across the table marked VA Reform Act Draft 1. It was just the start, but everyone in the room knew what it meant. Jasmine Crockett had lit a fuse. Down the hall, the Republicans avoided the cameras, deflecting questions with tight smiles. Nancy Mace didn't show her face. Her office released a short statement, no comment at this time. But every journalist knew silence was an answer. The hearing transcript hit the wire services that afternoon, and every outlet ran the same headline: Crockett confronts Mace the flag that stopped Congress. Even in the noisy cafeteria, the televisions played her words on loop. The blood on this flag has no color. Each replay hit harder than the last. By nightfall, the story had spilled beyond Washington. On local news broadcasts, anchors spoke with a gravity usually reserved for breaking wars or fallen heroes. The Washington Post ran a front-page photo of Jasmine standing tall, her binder of evidence pressed to her chest, eyes burning under the light. A new voice of accountability, the headline read. The New York Times called her the conscience that Congress forgot it needed. Online hashtags erupted. The flag speech you people moment, Crockett versus Mace. In living rooms across America, veterans sat watching in silence. One white veteran from Ohio looked into the camera of a local station and said, "I didn't know my brothers were treated like that. I feel ashamed." His words traveled just as fast as Jasmine's. On Facebook and X posts flooded in from every state stories of veterans denied loans, denied care, denied respect. A woman in Georgia wrote, "I used to think all veterans were treated the same. Turns out some had to keep fighting even after coming home." The post was shared 100,000 times before midnight. Inside the Capitol the next morning, the hearing that had begun as an insult had turned into a movement. Democratic lawmakers walked the halls with draft proposals tucked under their arms. One staffer whispered, "She did in one afternoon what we couldn't do in 5 years." Cameras followed Jasmine everywhere down the steps, through the rotunda, past marble statues that suddenly seemed to watch her. Every flashbulb captured the same image: her face, steady, her eyes bright, the weight of the flag still lingering on her shoulders. Even those who didn't agree with her had to acknowledge what she'd done. Late-night pundits called it the turning point of the season. Veterans organizations flooded congressional inboxes with letters of support. "Crockett veterans are not a burden. They are a broken promise," read a headline from the Associated Press. CNN replayed the moment when the veteran whispered, "That's my flag. I carried it home." Millions of viewers cried watching it. In classrooms, teachers played the clip for civics lessons. In diners, truck stops, and small-town bars, people argued about it, some praising Jasmine, others defending Mace. But everyone knew the conversation had changed. The image of Jasmine standing in that hearing room had become more than politics. It was a symbol of conscience, a flashpoint of truth in a city addicted to denial. By the end of the week, the halls of Congress buzzed with something rare: momentum. Drafts for the VA reform bill circulated faster than gossip. A headline from Politico summed it up best: one speech, one flag, one firestorm. On every network screen, the same picture appeared again: Jasmine Crockett, the young congresswoman with the thick folder and the unwavering stare, standing under the Capitol seal. It wasn't just a photo anymore. It was history caught in motion. The week after the hearing, the echo of Jasmine Crockett's words was still shaking the country. But tonight the cameras were gone. There were no microphones, no marble walls, just a crowded town hall in Dallas, filled with folding chairs, coffee cups, and faces lined with years of service. Veterans sat shoulder to shoulder, some in caps that read Vietnam, some Iraq, some simply U.S. Army. The lights buzzed overhead, warm and imperfect, casting soft shadows across the flag pinned to the back wall. Jasmine stood at the podium, the same folder of documents in front of her, but this time she didn't need it. She looked around the room, letting the silence settle before she spoke. Her voice was calm, clear, and unfiltered. "Privilege," she began, "isn't about skin color. Privilege is about whether the promise of this nation is kept for you or taken from you." The words were simple, but they hit like thunder. Every syllable carried the weight of that hearing, the blood-stained flag, and the silence that followed. "When America breaks its word to one veteran, it betrays all of them," she continued. "And when we stand by and let that happen, we become part of the betrayal." Her eyes swept across the crowd, faces hardened by memory, eyes glistening with something between pain and pride. "That's what we fight for now. Not charity, not pity, justice." The room was still for a heartbeat, and then it happened. A single clap, then another. Then the entire hall rose to its feet. The sound filled the air, echoing off the old wooden beams, raw and unstoppable. Veterans who hadn't stood in years pushed themselves upright, tears streaking their faces. One man, his uniform too tight over his chest, stepped forward through the crowd. He was trembling, his medals glinting under the light. He didn't say a word at first. He just wrapped his arms around Jasmine and whispered, "You fought for us again, not in war, but here." She hugged him back, the weight of that embrace heavier than any applause. Reporters in the back wiped their eyes behind their cameras. The headline the next day read, "Crockett to America, a promise, not a burden." The photo showed her mid-speech, her hand pressed to her heart, the flag behind her fluttering from an open window. Across the country, the clip of that line, "Privilege is about whether the promise is kept or stolen," flooded social media. It wasn't a speech anymore. It was a rallying cry. On Capitol Hill, her words found their way into folders, drafts, and whispered conversations. Within days, the Veterans Reform and Equity Act appeared on the congressional calendar. The press called it the military promise moment. In the halls of Congress, journalists crowded around lawmakers. One senator told CNN Crockett's courage forced us to face the truth that patriotism doesn't end when the uniform comes off. The New York Times headline read, "From hearing room to history, Crockett's words ignite VA reform." On talk shows and podcasts, veterans of every background debated what keeping the promise really meant. It wasn't partisan anymore, it was personal. The hearing that began with an insult had turned into a national reckoning. Weeks later, Jasmine's office received hundreds of letters. Some were typed, some handwritten, many from veterans and their families. One envelope arrived with no return address, just a shaky script on the front. "For Jasmine Crockett, from a brother in arms." Inside was a letter written in blue ink, the paper yellowed at the edges. It read, "You made me see something I should have seen long ago. I'm 75 years old, white, and proud of my service. I lived my whole life believing every veteran was treated the same. You showed me that I lived inside a promise that was kept while my brothers lived inside one that was broken. I can't change the past, but I can face it. Thank you for opening my eyes." Jasmine read the letter in her office alone, the city lights of D.C. flickering through the window. For a long time, she didn't move. Then she folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the same folder that once held the flag, the folder that had become her symbol of truth. She whispered, "This is the America we fight for," and turned off the light. Days later, the committee chamber reopened for a new session. The flag, now properly framed, cleaned, but never erased of its scars, hung on the wall behind her seat. As Jasmine entered, every camera turned. But this time, the energy was different. There was respect, there was silence, there was change. The Military Promise Bill was officially read into the congressional record, co-sponsored by members from both parties. A moment of applause rippled through the room, rare, genuine, human. Reporters captured the image that would circle the world: Jasmine Crockett standing before her desk, her binder pressed to her chest, her gaze locked forward, fierce, unflinching, unbroken. The same eyes that once stared down Nancy Mace now faced something larger, the weight of history. The veterans in attendance stood again, saluting in quiet unity. No speeches this time, no debates. Just the sound of the flag above them, stirring in the air, conditioning a whisper of what had been won. Outside, the headlines wrote themselves. "The woman who made Congress listen." Crockett and the flag that changed everything. In living rooms across America, people who had once turned away from politics leaned closer to their screens watching her speak. The story had come full circle, from insult to reckoning, from hearing to hope. And in the final frame, caught by a single camera, left rolling long after the crowd had gone, Jasmine stood in the now empty hearing room. The flag hung behind her, its edges still torn but proud. The lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the marble floor. She looked toward the empty chairs where the veterans had sat, her expression steady, her purpose carved in silence. Jasmine Crockett didn't need to speak. The nation already knew. She had become the living symbol of what justice looks like when it refuses to bow the promise, kept at last in the hands of those who had earned it. Thank you for watching until this moment, and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.